Hello, and here we are again, ready to shoot some landscape photography. In today's video, what I thought I would do is spend this video talking a little bit more about landscape photography settings. It's something a lot of you ask me about a lot, so today I'm going to show you my process. Also, today's episode is sponsored by Squarespace. If you need a website, a domain name, or an online store, make your next move with Squarespace. In a lot of my other videos, I talk quite a bit about composition and how I visualize the shot, how I then set the camera up, position it, the perspective, all that type of thing, which is how I capture the scene in front of me. I've been a little bit reluctant though to talk about the camera settings, but this video is dedicated to that. When I first attach my camera to the tripod, I'm always going to switch it into manual mode because I think that I want the camera to be an extension of my arm, of my body, or just when I put it on a tripod, it's an extension of me. And to do that, or to achieve that, I think you need to have full control over what the camera is doing. So manual mode is the place to be. I then will always shoot in RAW. I just don't see any reason not to shoot in RAW. After that, I then think about the exposure triangle. Now that's the relationship between aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. I've got an ebook if you want to download that explains all of them in detail, but it's essentially balancing the exposure triangle to get the right effect or the right exposure for you. So I'll generally start with ISO, and ISO 100 is going to work for the vast majority of situations. There are some times when you might up it a bit to get the shutter speed up as well, but most of the time I'm going ISO 100. After that, I'm going to think about the aperture, and I use the aperture to adjust my depth of field mostly. If I have something in my foreground that's quite close to the front of the lens, then I'm going to have a higher aperture number, which means a smaller actual aperture. So usually around f16, you'll be able to get everything in focus. But if you don't have anything particularly close to the front of the lens, then I want to maximize the sharpness that the lens provides, and I'm going towards f8. That's around the area where you're going to get maximum sharpness. Sometimes you'll go to f11, dependent on that foreground again, but f8, f11 or f16 will be the vast majority of my shots. I then just use the shutter speed I'll just roll the shutter speed up and down to get the right exposure. I will use it creatively sometimes with long exposures, but that's how I use the shutter speed, just to get the exposure right. So if you can master the settings on your camera, get that manual mode nailed down, then that's when it's a bit like driving a car. It just becomes second nature. You won't remember your journey or what you've done on your camera, and then you just really start getting those creative juices flowing. Okay, so that's that. I'm going to pack the stuff into the bag again. I want to get a shot taken. So I've found this beautiful little cove here with this tremendously impressive waterfall. When you want to practice your landscape photography settings in manual mode, there's nothing better than finding a waterfall, and there are lots of them when you're shooting in the UK. So I've got my shot composed here. I'm at a vertical and I'm just getting the stream leading you up into that waterfall, and then that waterfall is sort of prominent in the shot. The sky above has a few flakes of blue and a bit of cloud in there as well, and I'm managing to capture that all in one frame because the dynamic range of my camera is pretty good and it's relatively good light for shooting this sort of shot. So all I'm doing here is, because I'm not using any filters other than the circular polarizer to take the glare off the shot, off the water that is, I'm at f22, I'm working between f18 and f22, and when we're thinking about the exposure triangle that I talked about earlier, what that allows me to do, because I'm reducing the amount of light coming into the camera, I can then increase my shutter speed, and I'm at I'm only at 1/4 of a second, and that f/22 aperture in the current lighting is allowing me to do that. And what that does is just let the water move through the frame for about 1/4 of a second, and it gives you that nice bit of movement in the water. ISO for this shot is at 100. I want the least amount of sensitivity from the sensor, and I want a nice clean image, which ISO 100 gives me. So I'm going to wait for the light to go overcast again, and then I'm going to capture this shot. Beautiful scene. Let's shoot it. Okay, so I'm pretty much back where I started at Ribble's Head Viaduct. This is a composition I have shot before. Last time I did a vlog here. It's a really nice composition. You get a good view of the viaduct, and then you get the Ingleborough Mountain in the background, and that's the same composition that I've gone for today. But today I'm going to use it to show you what I do to get the exposure right. How do I meter my shot? First thing I do is, like I said, get the exposure triangle right with the sort of creative way I want to have it. So I'm at f/16 here because I've got some of these reeds in the foreground of the shot, and I want them to be sharp, and I want them to be within my depth of field. So I'm at f/16, I'm at ISO 100. I'm then at a 1/10 of a second, and the way I go about getting that exposure is, firstly, I will look at the meter, the built-in meter on the camera. A lot of the time it will then be okay, but I will then check it using the live view mode. So I just click into live view, it pops up on the screen, and you can use the LCD screen itself to see how the image will look. I will then use the histogram to get it as spot on as possible. So my histogram here is looking pretty good. It's not peaking to the left with the blacks, it's not peaking to the right with the highlights, and then I'm not going off the top, which means it's overexposing for that certain color tone. I also use it for focusing a lot of the time because the focus on this camera using the live view is absolutely perfect. If your camera doesn't have the touch to focus on the LCD screen, look through the viewfinder, focus in, then switch the automatic focus off, so you're then in manual focus. That's focusing and metering. Let's take the shot. 2-second timers on there so it doesn't move around, and that is looking really good. Okay, so I am set up for my final shot of the day, and this is my composition pretty much, with the viaduct going left to right in the scene, and then I'm hoping to get lots of beautiful golden light on that viaduct, shining through with some big shadows, and that should look really good. I've got the camera really low down on the floor because I'm on this limestone ledge, and I want the ledge to appear as if it is right in the frame, in the foreground, and then just lead you in straight up to the viaduct without getting all of this sort of rubble and rubbish from this old cave system here. Settings wise, I am at f/16 because that stone ledge is right in the foreground on very, very close to the lens. It's still looking sharp at f/16, so I'm happy with that. I'm at ISO 100 again, and when you are shooting the sunset, you are always going to have a much brighter sky than you are in the foreground. So balancing the exposure is the challenge with a shot like this. You've either got bracketing or you've got ND grads. I use bracketing because it's easier. I usually do 2 stops either side. That's what I'm doing here, and it's going to be a really nice scene. When sunset comes, I'm going to capture that moment. It's actually going to come just before sunset because it's going to dip behind the mountain there first. But I hope you have got some value out of just seeing how I go about using my landscape photography settings, because once you master it, you then just don't need to worry about it in future. And partly that's why I haven't included it in my videos up to now, because I don't want it to be the thing you focus on. It's not the camera settings that are going to make you a great landscape photographer. It's about the visualization, about getting out actually into these amazing landscapes and then just putting your personality into your photographs. And the camera settings are purely a technical thing that you just need to master so you can then explore all those other things that I was talking about before. So I hope you've enjoyed the video. It is sponsored by Squarespace now. Go to squarespace.com to start your free trial today, and go to squarespace.com/firstman to get 10% off your first purchase. And if you could leave a comment down below, let me know what you think of the video and have a bit of a discussion about what settings you use, because I'm learning from you. I hope you're learning a few things from me as well, and it should hopefully benefit all of us. Anyway, I'll see you on another video very, very soon. I'm Adam. This is First Man Photography in the Yorkshire Dales. Absolutely stunning